Hello, good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. Appreciate the invitation. Juven Romero. I'm one of the advisors at the Center for Careers in Teaching at Cal State Fullerton, as well as a Project Propel coordinator. And I'll let Arthur introduce himself as well.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're happy to represent Cal State Fullerton and provide some educational opportunities and resources for everybody logged in this afternoon. My title here is the K-16 Pathway Project Coordinator, so I work very closely with Juven and his team with Project Propel, but I also, towards the end of the presentation, will give quickly 4 other pathways that we have developed here at Cal State Fullerton that's open to our community college partners and students. And if anybody needs at the end of the presentation, Juven and I will both leave our contact information in case you need any additional resources.
Yeah, thank you, Arthur. So we are going to talk about the bilingual authorization and Project Propel. That's going to be definitely a big topic, but I want to approach this also as preparing to come to Cal State Fullerton and preparing for the eventual credential, right? There's a systemic way of approaching it to get from right now as a future transfer student to eventually getting your credential and bilingual authorization. And I'm also sprinkling in some other programs that you can be part of here at Cal State Fullerton when you arrive, right? Because there's more than just Project Propel, and we all work in tandem to support anybody that wants to be a future teacher, not just a future bilingual teacher. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started real quick here. All right, so I want to start out by just introducing the Center for Careers in Teaching, right? So essentially, it's a physical space that when students transfer to Cal State Fullerton, they can become part of if they're future teachers. And we offer all of the things that you see on the screen here. We offer free printing. As long as students bring their own paper, you can print to your heart's content. And that is definitely something very, oops, sorry. Yes, I see
Uh,
a hand here.
and I think, Juven, it may be that the presentation slides are not,
Oh, I thought I pressed share. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
they're not showcasing. Emily, was
Okay.
that your
Thank you.
question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, sorry. I thought I pressed share. I just pressed it, but I didn't click share. Okay. All right. So can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So here's this where we're at. So the Center for Careers in Teaching is a physical space that we have. We offer free printing, like I mentioned, and we also offer probably the biggest thing that you're gonna need as a transfer student is GE and teacher pathway advising, right? So in order to apply to a credential, you need to fulfill not only your GEs, which are important just in general, but also specific teacher pathway requirements that I'm gonna briefly talk about later. But these are essential because these are going to put you in the process to apply to a credential, which you need in order to apply to a bilingual authorization. And I'll talk about more of that connection a bit later. We also offer a little bit more academic planning for future teachers. So depending on which credential you want to apply, we have several. There's specific scenarios and things you need to accomplish in order to do that. And everything could also be on a specific student basis, right? So depending on where you're at in your academic pathway, it might look a little bit different than other people. So it's important that you come visit us once you get to Cal State Fullerton to understand that and really pinpoint those things. And we also offer a lot of information with current teacher preparation requirements. Things change and they have been changing for the past couple of years. So it's important to stay in touch so you'll learn what things are new, when things are changing, if there's any credentials being added, for example, like our PK to third grade credential that's being added next year. It's important to keep in touch so you learn about those things. And a little just kind of the same thing, the last point, specific preparation requirements for our credential programs. If you have any questions or want to learn more, follow us on Instagram. We have all of this information and more there, so definitely check us out to stay in touch. So let's talk a little bit about the other special programs that we have besides Project Propel. That's a small portion of what we offer, right? And our biggest one that kind of is the umbrella for everything really in terms of programs is called Tied and Future Teachers, right? And essentially what it does is that it supports future teachers by creating a network of future teachers, right? And they learn a lot of things there. For example, professional and personal development skills is a really strong foundation that they have so that students feel prepared once they apply to their credential and also become actual teachers. Um, we have a lot of speakers come in, either it could be current teachers, current credential students, and even credential advisors to help students in that pathway and not feel overwhelmed by all the things that they need to start to do. We have that, team of people, educators that can help students with that. So learn the ins and outs of teaching credentials. Like I mentioned, we have the credential advisors come in and talk about that since there is quite a bit of things that students need to do. We have the credential advisors come and talk about that. And last but not least is making lasting friendships in community. So aside of those workshops that we have, we also have a lot of cool social events. In fact, I think we're having a social event either this Friday or next Friday, where students just come in, hang out, get some food, and just create that friendship and community, which aside from making friends is really good because these individuals, once they go into the credential program, they're a network at that point, right? And you get to know where those friends end up working at, right? And that could support you in finding a future career as well. And we're seeing that currently with our new cohort of students going into the credential program. So it really is a wide net approach to this program that I think has supported a lot of our students. There's our Instagram as well if you'd like to check that out. We're quite active on it. This one is another amazing one. This one's called Men of Color in Education. And essentially, as it states, it's a community of Black and Latino male future educators, as we're seeing that there's a lack of Black and Latino male educators in California, really in the whole country, but specifically here is in California. And these workshops are very similar to the Titan Future Teacher workshops, but with the lens of what it means to be a Black or Latino male in education and how we can support our future Black and Latino male educators as they go on to their careers. They have monthly meetings on Thursdays, and there's a lot of professional development skills, a lot of personal development skills. In fact, our next meeting next Thursday is going to be about how to be a professional, right? So learning how to tie a tie is going to be a topic we're going to talk about. Also, how to communicate professionally with colleagues and administrators. So just things to help them prepare in that atmosphere as a future educator. There's their Instagram page as well. Definitely check it out if you're interested. A great one to create a good community. These guys are awesome. Another one is our Student California Teachers Association. So this one is a little bit different than the others because the others are coordinated by current advisors. This one is coordinated by students, right? So fully, run by students. They have their president, they have their vice president, their secretary, their treasurer. All of that is run by the students, and it's a great program to learn kind of the ropes as to what it means to be more than an educator, but also a representative voice that speaks on behalf of teachers and hears on behalf of future teachers. So you get to learn that leadership, those leadership skills that are very important as a future teacher, not only in the classroom, but also just as a professional and administrator in an education settings. And it's an amazing program. A lot of students become friends and they learn a lot of cool stuff in their workshops. For example, one of the most important and I would say interesting workshops for this one is how to become a substitute teacher, which is something that we always recommend students to try out if they want to kind of dip their toes into teaching. They have this, I think every semester they have a workshop on how to become a substitute teacher, and a lot of students come out of that with excitement to get started. So if you're interested in this particular club, definitely check out their Instagram page as well. And it's a great one. It's a really great one. And last but not least, that's our program, Project Propel, right? So this is actually the picture of our most current cohort, and this is just a small kind of sample size of students. We had a lot more that day, but that's who we are and what we do. So what is Project Propel? So as we mentioned earlier, there is something you can obtain what's called a bilingual authorization, right? Which allows you to teach in a language other than English. And a very important note to this is it does not mean to teach English as the language itself, or rather Spanish as the language itself, like you would if you became a Spanish teacher or even an ESL atmosphere, but rather to utilize the language that you know in the setting, in the classroom, right? So like a dual immersion program that some of you may have heard about, bilingual programs as well, which utilize multiple languages at once in the classroom. Most notably, we've heard a lot about English and Spanish classrooms. That's what the bilingual authorization focuses on. And what Project Propel does is prepare students to enter the bilingual authorization program, which the simplest way that I can explain as to how to, get into the bilingual authorization program, you need three things. You need a bachelor's degree. You need to have that bachelor's degree completed by the time that you apply for a credential and get into the bilingual authorization program. Second thing is to apply and be accepted into a credential program. And third is to pass the entrance exam to the bilingual authorization, right? So that could mean if you're a Spanish speaker, you do that exam in-house. And typically that's done your first semester of your senior year or fourth year at Cal State Fullerton, when students are typically applying for the credential program. That's when that exam is taken. If you speak one of the other languages that we offer, which are Korean, Vietnamese, Khmer, or Mandarin, you take a bilingual authorization CSET exam, which is an exam that some people take to show that they understand the subjects that they want to teach. And specifically for this would be that other language that you want to utilize. So you need those three requirements really, right? Um, and Project Propel helps students prepare for those by a lot of different ways. So the first one is one-on-one academic advising for anyone that wants to be a bilingual teacher, right? I am that advisor for this particular program, but also for anybody interested in becoming a bilingual teacher on that point of resource, so that if students have any questions or want some extra support, then I can point them to the right places and offer that necessary support. We also have our monthly meetings, which are called side chats. And this one right here that you see on the picture was our first one for this semester. And they're similar to the other programs that I mentioned. They're group sessions where we talk, we have a lot of different workshops that delve into different topics that students are interested in. And one in particular that we're actually talking about tomorrow, we're going to talk about a thing called critical pedagogy, right? So the idea of learning how to teach and learning how to teach to empower students, specifically students in bilingual classrooms, right? So that's going to be our first workshop of the semester to help students understand the topic and feel empowered so that when they go on to become teachers, they understand how it works and how they can utilize their talents as bilingual teachers, not just to teach students, but also help them feel empowered with their bilingualism. And we also offer language support through book clubs, course suggestions, and workshops, like I mentioned. So sometimes students feel like they don't have the language proficiency needed to become a bilingual teacher, but they in fact do. It's just learning how to increase that language proficiency, and we have different ways of doing that. One of the most impactful ways that we've seen is simply by practicing the language, which sounds kind of obvious, but it's so obvious sometimes that we don't really think about it too much. But I've seen it firsthand where students come in and they don't feel comfortable saying Spanish. They don't think they speak it well or read it well or write it well. But through that practice, through that continuous just support, they end up getting into the bilingual authorization program. And we've seen that this cohort, we had, I think, about 10 students that have gone on to the program. So just because you feel like you can doesn't mean you won't be able to. It's just a case of coming in for advising and asking for that support. If anybody is interested in learning more, we have our interest form right there on the screen. Feel free to scan that. I'll be sending out the presentation too, so that students can kind of look at it themselves and join any of our interest forums or Instagram pages that we have.
And thank you, Emily, for dropping those links directly in the chat. So
Oh
if
yeah,
anybody in
appreciate it.
here, thank you so much for that, Emily.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pathway to teaching. And the reason why it's because, like I mentioned earlier before, there is a systemic way to approach from an undergrad student all the way up to your eventual credential program, which ties into the bilingual authorization. So having an idea of what that means as a future teacher, so you can start out strong, is very important. So I'm going to start to talk about like what it means, like how do you become a teacher first and foremost, because without this knowledge you can't become a bilingual teacher. And this is the most simplistic way of looking at this with this formula, right? So like I mentioned, bachelor's degree is needed 100% to even apply to a credential, and then you add that the actual credential, and then you become a teacher, right? So this is the most simplistic way of looking at it. You can major in any subject that you want. Any subject that you want is perfect, but there are some that we recommend, and I'm going to talk a bit about those. So we do have some recommended majors depending on what you want to teach, right? So we have three credential programs currently at Cal State Fullerton. And the first one's called multiple subjects. So this means that anybody that wants to teach K through about eighth grade, this is the credential program that you're most likely going to be applying to. And these are the different majors that have a direct pathway to that credential application, right? So first and foremost, we have urban learning, which is our newest major at the College of Education. Currently, I believe transfer students won't be able to transfer into urban learning. I want to say fall 26 or fall 27. I don't recall the exact date, but right now transfer students can apply to this one. But if you're a child and adolescent studies major with a specific concentration called elementary pathway, this is a great major for you because it has a direct pathway to the multiple subject credential program, as well as liberal studies as well. Liberal studies has a direct pathway to that credential. The differences between liberal studies and China adolescent studies is that China adolescent studies, or CAS for short, is more kind of like vocational. I don't know if that's the correct word, maybe more hands-on approach to teaching and pedagogy, as opposed to liberal studies, which can be more methodology and theory. So depending on what you like the best, either doing a lot of reading and kind of doing reports on that, which is more liberal studies, or CAS, which is more hands-on sort of training and practice and the different methodologies and theories that students learn in liberal studies. You choose accordingly, but both of them would basically do the same thing in terms of their pathway to the credential. And last one is human services. Human services is another one that students like to utilize. I believe there's also a human services with elementary pathway or concentration. This one, although does have some of those topics like the ones previously mentioned, it doesn't have necessarily a direct pathway to the credential program. You might have to take some extra exams called CSET exams or do some extra coursework. But if you're a human services student, definitely come meet with us. I mean, meet with us for any of these, but for human services, we might need to program your schedule and your classes a little bit differently. So come in and get that support. That was for multiple subject, right? Next is single subject, which basically it's pretty simple. If you choose a major that aligns with the subject that you want to teach, more than likely that will tie into the credential pretty nicely. There's a couple of exceptions like history, for example, and physical education. But outside of that, if you want to be a math teacher, English teacher, any of the world languages, if you major in that language, then that is going to fulfill a pretty important prerequisite that I'll be talking about called the subject matter prerequisite. And last but not least is the special education credential. This one's a bit different than the other two because students usually choose a major that aligns with the age group that they want to work with, and it's based more on ages than on actual subjects or grades in general. And the preparation for this credential comes with the prerequisite courses. So these serve as a foundation to the credential program. And it's important that you come meet with us to learn what those prerequisite courses are and how they would play into eventually applying to the credential program. But these are the three big credential programs that we have. Like I mentioned briefly, we are having a PK to third grade credential coming in, but that's not going to be until next year. So if you're interested in that one and you're transferring sometime either in spring or maybe next fall, then you might be on time and you might be able to do that one. But as of right now, there's no applications for that one yet. So I want to delve a little bit deeper into the credential program to put it into context as to how long they take and what it is. So traditionally, it's a 2-semester program following the bachelor's degree. So having a bachelor's degree is a requirement to apply for these credential programs. And typically it's about a year. And it includes pedagogy. So there's that word again. So the study of how to teach and student teaching as well, which means you're in the classroom supporting a teacher and actually creating the curriculum and instructing students. So that happens in the credential program itself. And again, those are the 3 credential programs that we have and the grades and ages that they typically fall under. And they all have student teaching, they all have pedagogy, they all have that. It's just going to be a little bit different depending on which credential and grades you're going to be teaching. So I'm gonna get a little deep here, or not too deep, but explain a little bit about the teacher prep requirements. Just so anybody that has any questions on those, I could definitely help. But there's 2 major requirements that I've alluded to already a little bit, right? The first one is a subject matter competency. So this means that you understand the subjects that you want to teach, right? And the second is called the credential prerequisites classes, essentially, which kind of form the foundation and help you prepare for when you actually get into the credential program. And these 2 need to be completed before you graduate with your bachelor's degree. And they all can be fulfilled with coursework. There's some that could be fulfilled with some CSET exams, like I mentioned before. But essentially, whichever way you go and however you complete these, they need to be completed before you graduate with your undergrad degree, right? And as always, meet with us when you get to Cal State Fullerton to kind of learn that pathway for you and see what would be best and most efficient. So I won't go too deep into this, and you don't have to learn really any of these right now, but I want to show it because it shows what the prerequisites are for students that are interested in our credential program, specifically at Cal State Fullerton. Some of you might actually have taken some of these courses already. For example, if you want to be a multiple subject teacher, you might have taken something with fieldwork component in teaching or in the classroom, and that's usually equates to our EDL 315 class right here. So if you've taken something with a fieldwork component in a classroom, you've done observation hours, more than likely that would fall under that, right? Same thing for single subject students that want to teach in high school. If you've taken something that you had to do observation hours, that's most likely going to be this class right here. And same thing for special education. If you did something similar, it might be this class right here, right? So if you already done something to that effect, then you might have one class already completed, right? And ethnic studies, if you've taken an ethnic studies class, it might count towards our prerequisites, right? So what's important with all of this information is that you come meet with us once you get to Cal State Fullerton so we can look at your classes, at your transcripts, and see what's already been taken and what needs to be taken next so that you don't have to double take classes or, waste any of that time and you can start actually putting attention into your major courses or the other prerequisites they need to complete. That's going to be very important, right? So just a little bit on this that I wanted to mention. Everything else, you'll learn more about that once you get into Cal State Fullerton. You don't need to really focus too much on that right now. So why a Cal State Fullerton teaching credential? This is something that we get asked by students quite a bit because there's a lot of credential programs in a lot of places. And one of the first things that we mentioned to our future students here is that Cal State Fullerton has a philosophy that it runs all the credential programs under, and it's called JEIE, which essentially means just, equitable, and inclusive education that supports all students and that empowers all students the same, regardless of the grade that they want to teach in, regardless of the ages. It just wants to support all students the same. So that's something that we do proudly and is one of the things that we're really known for in Cal State Fullerton. But another point of interest here is that we have a relationship with over 70 districts, right? So that includes Orange County, Riverside County, and LA County. And there's a great chance that from your teachers that you've had from K through 12th grade, at least one of them had to be a Cal State Fullerton graduate. 67% of OC educators completed the degrees at Cal State Fullerton. So degrees and credentials. So there's a great chance that many of the teachers that you've seen probably got their credentials at Cal State Fullerton. And the bilingual authorization, we have the biggest bilingual authorization program in the state. So a lot of the teachers, at least in Southern California, also got their bilingual authorization at Cal State Fullerton. So just a bit of a statistics there to kind of show where we stand in terms of programs. And students can become teachers in less than 1 year, right? So just some of the things kind of to understand as you prepare to get into that credential program and you want to learn more. It just helps to kind of get this context. And something that I like to mention to students too is so like how much students, future teachers get paid, which is obviously extremely important aside from helping students, right? And just to briefly go through this, right? If you just have a bachelor's degree, you would look at what's at the top here as kind of the pay scale that you would be starting with. And what this means is how do you become a teacher if you only have a bachelor's degree, right? Now, if I just mentioned the Cal State Fullerton, you can't do that. There are some universities that offer a bachelor's degree with the credential combined. So what this does is that students complete their credential as an undergrad student, right? So that means that it's not a post-bac program, which ultimately means that you just have a bachelor's really with a credential kind of on top of that. Which means that you end up at the first column here of pay scale, and these are the different districts that offer that. So that's something to keep in mind too, right? That if you attend a university that has that combined program, bachelor's and credential, you might be placed at the bottom tier of pay scales, right? But if you attend a university like Cal State Fullerton, for example, that has a bachelor's degree, but also has a post-bac. So after you graduate program for the credential, that means that you add 30 units on top of that. And one thing, oops, sorry about that, about credential programs or any program after you graduate with a bachelor's is that the more units that you obtain, the more class units that you obtain after your bachelor's degree, the more you get paid, right? So plus 30, that usually means your bachelor's degree plus a credential program. Programs are typically 30 units. So that adds to the starting pay scale that you can obtain at one of these districts. So now that we look at the other column, so plus 45 could be 30 units of the credential plus a bilingual authorization, which is about six, I believe, 6 to 8. And then you could add maybe a couple classes extra after that, or maybe some other certification. You get to 45, and then that's the pay scale, right? And then 60, that typically is a credential program. Maybe you add a master's program on top of that, bilingual authorization, whatever other certifications you want to add after that. And then that adds the last column at the bottom. So just I like to show this to also just show students like how much you would be getting paid as a future teacher, right? Which is important, right? Which is important. But yeah, so this is more or less, at least for these districts, what the starting pay would be. And there are some high need areas that we have in general in California, right? So first and foremost, bilingual authorization is one of the highest need areas that we have. In fact, with Project Propel, we work with Garden Grove Unified School District, Anaheim Unified School District, and also Santana College. So we've all come together and have realized that bilingual education is extremely important. And Garden Grove and Anaheim are looking at Cal State Fullerton to supply with future bilingual teachers in their districts. They're asking us directly that they need those students. So that's an extremely high need area. And that's just the districts that we're working with. But obviously, other districts have come and asked about our future bilingual teachers and if they can go teach there. So we have those direct connections with them that we can put students in contact with and see if it's a good match. We also have STEM subjects that is a huge need in California, in Southern California. So if you're a STEM major, math, for example, or any of the sciences, chemistry, biology, geology, etc., this is another high need area that districts are looking for. Special education, that's always a need, regardless of the subjects or language. That's a high need area as well that hires pretty quickly students that become teachers. So if that's an area that you're interested in, definitely something we can tap into. And also teaching in areas outside of Orange County, right? So like Riverside County, like I mentioned, LA County, and any of the other San Bernardino County, so anything outside of Orange County, they also are in high need of teachers, right? So one thing that I tell students is that you can stack these. These are stackable, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to be a math teacher, you want to get into the math credential, but you also speak Spanish. Then that means you can apply for a math credential and become a math teacher, and also to the bilingual authorization to be a bilingual math teacher, right? So that means that you get paid more to become a bilingual teacher, and you also get to be a math teacher and expand that in the classroom. You can have a bilingual classroom and a general education classroom just in English, and just expand that reach to a lot of students, right? And sometimes we have students that also want to be a special education teacher on top of that. So they're a STEM major, they also want to be a bilingual teacher, but also want to be in a special education setting. And it stacks a lot of those units that I was talking about previously, but also just the reach that you have that makes future teachers marketable to these districts that are looking to fulfill these spaces that they need teachers in. So if that's something that you're interested in and kind of stacking some of these things, come meet with us because we can help you figure that out so that you can enter these spaces and make yourself more marketable and just support more students. Ultimately, that's what we want to do, right? And a little bit more about the bilingual, how to become a bilingual teacher and obtain the bilingual authorization. So, like I mentioned, the things that you do need for sure is a bachelor's degree, right? Similar to the credential. You also need to apply and be accepted into a credential program. So these two are extremely important, and pass the bilingual authorization entrance exam, right? So if you're a Spanish speaker, it's done in-house. We can do it at Cal State Fullerton. It doesn't cost anything, and you can take it multiple times if the first time you're maybe a little nervous or you didn't do too well. That's what's great about doing it in-house for Spanish. If you want to obtain the bilingual authorization in any of these other languages, Mandarin, Korean, Khmer, Vietnamese, there is a bilingual authorization exam, CSUF exam that you can take to substitute that exam, right? And if that's what you want to do, or really what you would need to do, definitely important to come talk to us so we can tell you where to do that, where to sign up for that, and what the steps are to obtain that CSET result for the exam and be able to utilize that as you get into the bilingual authorization. So those three exams, as you see, or those three requirements, as you see, don't include a separate application to a credential program or a separate degree or minor or anything like that. As long as you fulfill these three, you're good to go. What you don't need is to feel like your language proficiency isn't good enough. I tell students all the time that, for example, for our Spanish speakers here, if you can speak the language in a conversational way, if you feel comfortable, at least with that conversational aspect to it, you're in a great place to start. Everything else can be added on top and be practiced, be it writing, be it reading. All of that comes easier if you have a conversational level of the language. So don't feel like you're starting from a deficit. You're not. It's just adding on top of your already of the tools that you already have. You also don't need to minor or major or take any extra classes in the language that you want to teach, like I previously mentioned. There's no need for that. I know students a lot of times want to also minor in the language that they want to teach. And if that's something you want to do, then by all means go for it. It's only going to support you, but it's not a requirement to do whatsoever, right? But these are kind of the things that I tell students to keep in mind so that they don't feel overwhelmed, and it just becomes easier to kind of create that pathway for future teachers and specifically your future bilingual teachers. But I want to give space to Arthur as well to speak on this a little bit. So go ahead and floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Juven. Juven just ended in regard to career exploration and pathways, and that's something I'm very passionate here. I work very closely with our K-12 partners as well as our community college partners. So I just want to take a couple minutes of your time this morning just to showcase a few of the other pathways. We have heard in depth about Project Propel this morning, but I do want to highlight four other pathways here at Cal State Fullerton that we're here to help. One is our Healthcare Education Pathways program. This is our HEP program. What really we have focused on is the fact that our local industry partners within healthcare, our hospitals, different medical teams have communicated that yes, a lot of the students coming from Cal State Fullerton have a very strong understanding of nursing. They have a very strong understanding of the pathway to become a doctor. But there are a lot of high wage roles within healthcare that we're currently hiring, and we actually would like to see more students from Cal State Fullerton applying for these positions, getting involved in apprenticeships, getting involved in internships. So a few of these titles that they've communicated over is team members. Again, they know nurses, they know doctors, but they may not be familiar with neurodiagnostic technologists. They may not be familiar with pathologist assistants. They may not be familiar with working on a clinical research team. There's non-client facing nurses, meaning that they are nurses, but they don't work with any one-on-one. They actually just working in the background. Medical sales staff, specialty pharmacy sales staff, these are all very high wage jobs. So what one pathway that we've really developed is an opportunity to invite our K-12 partners, we invite our community college partners, and we host the once a year large scale expo, and we bring in these industry individuals and we say, hey, Kaiser's here, Aetna Blue Cross is here. There's medical teams here that really are looking for students on our campus to get engaged in these pathways and these opportunities for a high wage career in Orange County, working on these teams. So what we host that's something that we definitely, for our team here at Rio Honda, we would like to be able to talk further about those opportunities to invite your students and your teams to come on by for that. That will be in March of next year. Another pathway we develop very closely is our paving educational pathways for careers in computing. This pathway is specific to our computer science majors. So if you know of anybody or staff faculty, when referencing this opportunity, we recognize that there's a lot of academic challenges with our students and we're coming, especially our first gen students. We know that there's a lot of things on people's plate. They're taking care of children, they're taking care of loved ones, they're working maybe 1, 2 part-time jobs, they're trying to balance school, and it's a lot. So what we recognize, if a student has received an F or a D or withdrawal from any of our introductory to computer science programs, we actually have a pathway set up for them. So we, through this grant, have been able to hire students who themselves are computer science majors, who themselves went through a difficult, challenging academic time, who themselves may have got a D or an F within the computer science class and are now thriving. The grant pays for one-on-one academic support. We develop different pathway opportunities available, different resources. We showcase opportunities to get involved on the computer science clubs and get involved in different meeting opportunities and networking opportunities. We also showcase a lot of the programs and services that are available on campus, such as opportunities to get involved in our counseling and psychological services programs, to work with the Career Center to develop economic opportunities. So really, it's a catalyst of support. We're very proud about that program, and a lot of the students who have received an FRD in computer science getting support through this program have actually came in, and then they themselves become hired to help the next round of students who may have some academic challenges. Our accounting pathway program, we work very closely with Fullerton College on this pathway. We would like to continue to expand this to our community college partners such as Rio Hondo. We have this opportunity where we bring in our accounting pathway program opportunities. Like we host in partnership with the School of Business, host different events, program services, career fairs specific to the College of Business. We're able to invite our community college partners from Fullerton College for those students to come on site. The grant actually pays for their parking. The grant gives them this opportunity to get on site, take a look at Cal State Fullerton, see the programs and services that are being offered, and then come to those events with the School of Business. So we're very happy to continue to build this partnership, and we really look at career exploration, especially again with a lot of first gen students. Hey, what does it look like at Cal State Fullerton? What programs or services? We really want to get those students on our campus and really take a look at those opportunities through accounting pathway programs. And then lastly, I'll highlight our pathways for careers in advanced manufacturing and engineering, very similar to how the healthcare industry is communicated to our teams that they really want to hire more students, not just within the traditional realm of nursing. Same thing with our advanced manufacturing programs, that there are a lot of engineering and computer science opportunities here in Southern California, specifically in Orange County. And we bring in conferences twice a year, large scale conferences with our open up to our K-12 partners and community college partners. This next event will actually be taking place on Tuesday, October 28th from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., completely free for our community college partners. So if there's anybody here, feel free to reach out to me. I can send a formal invitation over. It includes parking, it includes lunch, and it's an opportunity for bring our workforce development partners to come in and say, hey, we're hiring in these different categories. We want to see what's Cal State Fullerton students you guys are being educated on. We want to build this relationship. It's a great opportunity for our students, not only from the conference side, but we actually open up our engineering and our manufacturing labs on campus. And we ask that the students who come by take this tour on our campus with our industry professionals for them to have an opportunity to network together, but also discuss what's happening in the industry, what's happening academically. So it's a great opportunity. We do those conferences twice a year here at Cal State Fullerton. I'm definitely here to support any of our community college partners. I myself am a product of community college, so I'm very passionate about that. If there's anything that I can do to help, feel free to reach out to me. And like I said, Juven and I will leave our contact information at the end of the presentation. But thank you very much for this allowing me this time to speak, Juven. I appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, no problem, Arthur. Thank you for showing us the other pathways that exist because we understand that. Let me get back to that one real quick before we get into these. Oops. Let's see. There you go. That not everybody might want to be a future educator, a teacher, but we want to let you know that whatever it is that you do want to do, there's other pathways to do that as well, right? So it's a holistic approach to different career opportunities that are not just strictly for teaching, for future teachers, although it sounds like we're speaking to future teachers here, but there's always a pivot. And I've met many students that pivot careers, either from previously thinking they didn't want to be a teacher to now wanting to be a teacher, and the other way around, where they were on a pathway to become a teacher, but something else came by that they found was their passion and they pivoted to that. And one thing I tell students all the time is don't be afraid of those pivots if that's what it comes down to and what your passions ultimately come out to be. That's perfectly fine. And there is that support to make those changes at any point in time, really. But I want to show you some of our Instagram handles and social media handles, an interest list as well. So if you want to be a teacher, if you want to learn more about that, definitely join our interest list. So take a second if you can right now to scan the QR code and fill out that interest form. That's for our Center for Careers in Teaching. We don't spam students with emails, so you might get one or maybe even two during the year, the academic year, just to check in and inform you of anything that is future teacher related here at the center. But if you want to learn more in-depth information about our different programs, there are our handles are there on the right-hand side. You have the ones for Center for Careers in Teaching. You have the one for Men of Color in Education. You have the one for time featured teachers, obviously Project Propel as well, which we're pushing a lot. So if I highly encourage you to follow us on the Project Propel when we're trying to hit 300 followers, and we have a lot of great information there. We have the one for College of Education, and also our dean for the College of Education, Dean Kurtman, is on there as well. We have some of our X handles. If you're ever on campus, definitely come check us out. We are in the Education Classroom building, the third floor in room EC379, which is actually right next to my room, EC377. In October, we're going to have a big event. The university is going to have a big event called Fall in Love with Fullerton. So if you see that anywhere, definitely consider come to check us out for that one. All of the colleges are present here at Cal State Fullerton. Obviously, the Center for Careers in Teaching, and it's just an amazing opportunity to learn about Cal State Fullerton. And obviously, we're gonna have also a workshop, I believe, for future teachers there, which I'm gonna be hosting one of those sessions. So you'll be able to meet me in person if you're interested. But there's a lot of stuff coming up, and you're all invited as well for that. Are there any questions that we can take? Oops, sorry. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer some of those.
I'm not seeing any questions within the chat. If people are more comfortable asking the
Yeah.
questions in the chat, feel free to drop that, or feel free to unmute and go ahead and ask that way, whatever's easier.
See. If not, that's fine. Sometimes it takes a minute to come up with some questions or think about, all the information that we gave you, which is quite a bit of information. But if you do have any questions, though, I'm gonna put my email on the chat real quick. Feel free to reach out to me and ask any questions you'd like. If you want to set up a meeting, for example, I'm more than happy to schedule that. Not a problem, so that you can feel a little more comfortable maybe one-on-one. Okay, I do see Melanie. Go ahead, go for it.
Hi, I have a question. So whenever, sorry, one second. So if, say I get accepted to the teacher credential program,
Mhm.
I know that, it is required for us to do student teaching hours.
Mhm.
How many hours is that?
That's a great question. I don't recall the amount of hours that are currently required. Sometimes it can change year by year depending on the programs. I'm not exactly sure if I'm being completely honest, but that's something I can definitely check in and and let Emily know if she'd like to know that information to tell her students. But things sometimes change depending on credential by credential. A question that we also get kind of piggybacking off of that is how does the format look of the credential, right? Like, are there online classes? Are they in person? Is it every day or all day? And it depends. So the credential programs are created once students apply. They're in cohorts, so they're in groups, right? So you'll have like 6 groups, for example, and each of the different groups may operate differently. They might have a different format, right? So it might look like students go to class 4 times a week and in the evenings, but then do student teaching in the morning, so morning to afternoon. Sometimes students may go do student teaching for 3 days and then 2 days in class. So it really depends on the format of each of the groups. So it's sometimes a little bit hard to answer these questions because if I give a hard and fast rule, it might be completely different when students apply to it. But let me look into that and see how many hours on average students are expected to do. What I can tell you though is that on average, it is a daily occurrence. So typically it's from 7 a.m. to about 3:30 p.m. that students do student teaching. And typically it is about 4 times a week. So that I do know that on average is what it looks like. Again, mileage may vary depending on which of the cohorts you're placed in.
Okay, and then I do have another question. So I work at a school. I work as an instructional aide, bilingual instructional aide. So I've worked there for like 2 years. And before that, I've been in the educational field for 4 years. So my question is like, would those hours be able to translate or transfer to the student teaching our requirements?
To my knowledge, no, they're not, because the student teaching hours are very specific to the classes that you're going to be taking in the teaching credential as well. So it's very particular to that setting, right? So even though as a student teacher, they do go and actually teach the classroom and create their own curriculum and instructional design and all of this stuff. The way that it's set up in the classes, it's related to where you're going to be actually like how you're going to synthesize that information in the classroom in your pedagogical classes, for example, right? So to my knowledge, it's not allowed to do that, to utilize those hours. Again, students need to meet with the credential advisors at some point. When they get to Cal State Fullerton, they go to what's called a credential overview session, which if you're a transfer student, you don't need to worry about this right now. But when you get to Cal State Fullerton, that is a requirement. And it might be a great question to ask, but to my knowledge, it's not something that is currently allowed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? That's a great question. Thank you. Any other questions?
It looks like we're coming up on everybody's time.